Now, if you were going to write a user's guide for a CEO that wants to do a transformation, what would be the key tenets that you would have in that user guide?
You know, Stephen, if I had to write a user's guide, a how-to guide for leaders to drive change, I would have to take a page out of Douglas Adams' book, and I'd call it The Hitchhiker's Guide to Change Management. I think that would be awesome. And I think some of the points that I'd include in that would be, expect the best, plan for your corrections. If you're expecting corrections, you're never going to aim high enough. Be ambitious. Expect the best, but plan for your correction. Be prepared. Plans are not statements of aspiration. Plan your work, then work your plan. And I must sound like a broken record, Stephen, but how often have I seen organizations with enterprise-wide PMOs, project management offices, that have wonderful, multi-thousands of line project plans, and then they ignore them. So plan your work and work your plan. You know, I believe I said this before, but aim. How many organizations do you know say, I'm going to be 5 times bigger in 5 years? And you go, terrific. What does good look like when you get there? And they're like, not sure, but it's going to be great. And it's like, no, aim. Take aim. Say, I'm going for that particular spot.
It's interesting because you talked before about the notion of defining success. Is it important to baseline your current state in order to measure success against it?
The as-is analysis, Stephen. Most people say, we're changing, so we don't have to know where we are at the moment, so because we're changing. Unfortunately, we do actually have to measure not only the value that will be released, but the amount of effort that it's going to take and costs. Until you understand a baseline, you can't actually understand the difference. It's very easy to say, we're changing, let's not look at where we are, because then anywhere you go, you're successful, aren't you? Because you have no idea where you started. So in some ways, I think that's actually rather politic and a little bit cheeky of people. Let me caveat by saying, you can get caught up in analysis and never begin. Yeah? So everything must be measured in the sense that it has to be taken into consideration and not overblown, what I mean by measured. So of 100% of all your company's processes, pick 20% that are going to release the most value. Stick with those and run. Don't worry about the others. 80%, take care of itself.
The user guide sounds like a great idea. Are there any other things you would want to consider including in it?
I would make sure that we always play with heart. And to me that means we're going to make some tough decisions about what it is to be a great company. And remembering offering people clear, decisive images of what that future looks like allows them to make a choice. And when we play with heart, we play with an enormous amount of compassion around those choices. These are human beings, fellow human beings we're talking about. Also, when you play with heart, you remember as a leader that you don't have to be draconian, but you can be firm. But just remember that it's okay to have fun. It's okay to celebrate success. What becomes difficult in when you don't play with heart is when you're celebrating empty success. People can see through that very clearly and they'll start to feel deceived, and then they will become very disconnected from your business. Play with heart. Do what you know is right. People aren't silly. They understand in the core of who they are what is actually right.
So no hidden agendas, and integrity is critical in the process?
I think integrity is your ticket to play as a leader in anything that you do, outside of change, anything else. Without integrity, that manifests itself in confidentiality, clear, transparent communication, being prepared to say, I can't actually share that with you right now. I think integrity can also look like in a leader saying to someone, Stephen, in the power of the apology, I'm not going to apologize for my message, but my delivery was really lacking, and let me apologize for speaking too harshly. This is what I mean by playing with heart. To me, it's the basics of being a good leader. Your job as a leader is to remove obstacles to allow people to shine. So play with heart. I'd also include in the guide, Stephen, going from that, is you have to trust and play as well. Sometimes you can plan, and you can make charts, and you can put together presentation decks, and you can talk and have meetings. But at the end of the day, you have to take the moment and say, you know what? Forget the lot of it. I've got it there. I know it's there behind me. I'm just going to jump. You've got to trust and play, because the best golfer can come up to the tee and stare at that ball, having done a million of lessons, triangulated everything we need to do, tested the wind direction, everything else like that. But if you don't ever hit the ball, you're not in the game. So play with heart, but make sure you're actually playing. Let's celebrate simplicity is another key element I'd add to the guide. It is so very easy to be complex, to suffer from our own terminal uniqueness. And what I mean by that is there's phrases like we've always done it that way. We've always had to have all these really complex systems. The example that comes to mind is I worked with an organization where we started to analyze our complexity. This organization was a multi-billion-dollar mining company, and they had no less than 8,000 plus reports generated out of finance alone. Because I wanted to see, my cash flow when Mercury was in retrograde. And then I wanted to see it when it was the 14th of March and Mercury was in retrograde. And it was ridiculous. And you know what was really strange is when we pulled all of them and we said you can have 80, they didn't actually miss them. But it's very easy to get caught up in complexity. Simplicity is it takes so much effort. It's so difficult. But be prepared to celebrate simplicity. Say, do I really need that? One other short story on practicing simplicity. When we talk about security, both in our technical systems and in the way we do work, we say, right, we don't want Stephen to see this and we don't want Flavia to see that. So we're going to build this really complex process to make sure that y'all don't see those things. But we never stop and ask, well, why? If Stephen doesn't need that information, why do I care if he sees it? He probably will never go look. But yet we're going to really get caught up in what it is to separate everything when we actually think a little bit more globally, a little bit more, can I say, open-framed. We actually can practice simplicity. Simplicity releases value from businesses, dollar value from businesses. Complexity adds overheads.
I'd imagine there's a trust element there too, so you give people more responsibility and generally they rise to the challenge, don't they?
Well, we would hope if we hired people into roles that we trust them and we say that they have integrity because we've asked them to join our organization. And then we're going to tell them we're not going to let you see things because we don't think you can. Something about our hiring practice is probably where I'd go with that one, Stephen.
Okay, so anything else with the guide that you'd throw in?
You know, certainly would, and the last one would be don't panic.
That sounds familiar.
Don't panic. Enjoy the walk and bring a towel. And what I mean by that is, it's going to be okay. Organizations have remarkable ways of doing very, very well. If you have laser precise decision making, if you play with heart, if you're prepared to make corrections and not create these megalithic systems that you hold, if you do all of these things, which to me are all just elements of great leadership, you're going to be okay. Don't panic. Because what happens with a panicked leader is a leader that isn't thinking clearly any longer. Back to my failed CEO. Those guys don't panic. You know why? Because nothing is as bad as failing as a CEO. So they know how to hold their resolve.
Right.
So don't panic and bring your towel.
Okay, thank you.